Hi, what's up? We're in the next part. Please go check out the previous part to gauge your bearings. I'm busy out here talking about the state of the nation that is South Africa, but the state of the globe at large. And in the previous part, I was rapping on about how it is that I'm already sure what's going on here, because I'm seeing two different things that appear to be diametrically opposed. I'm seeing restoration of my life, and so therefore a future, but I'm also seeing condemnation entirely, or destruction, desolation. And I spoke about how it is that that's similar to Jonah, basically preaching to Nineveh, and if they repent, God will stay his hand, but if they don't, finished off is what is going to happen. And then I gave a couple of examples of why it is that I am so pulled, polarized essentially on two extremes of understanding, because the world seems to be resisting a lot of rubbish, but at the same time a lot of rubbish is being proliferated. I then started talking about the South African schooling system, and that's where I last ended. I spoke about how it is that I was raised up in both government schools and private schools, the private schools of which were Catholic, and they were largely regulated religiously, and as a result of the religious facets to those schools, there was a lot less waywardness in the children. Indeed, but ubiquitously generally from primary school all the way up until high school, in both government and private schools that were religious, there was nonetheless a respect and a reverence by children of authority, of adults, grown-ups. And I spoke about how it is that I never under heaven ever witnessed any child ever come at a teacher, and I also never ever witnessed any parent fighting the school. They were always fighting their child for being disrespectful at school. It was never, the kid's side was never taken. That's what I'm trying to explain to you guys when I was on the come up. And I'm busy explaining that story to help you, to help myself and you get to the point where I feel as if though God is giving confirmation that we're at the end, instead of the confusion that I'm at. And if something does not stay this downward projectile, this thing that is on a downward trajectory, if something does not stay it, because an object in motion will stay in motion, Newton's law of motion applies here, even metaphorically. If this downward trajectory of moral turpitude continues, there is no way that this earth is a going concern. And I am now presently, in the forefront of understanding as to what's going on in South African schools, because I happened upon something that is going on in the South African schooling system, even though I am actively avoiding South African news, South African media, because of the way that South Africa has hurt me. And I spoke about how it is that South Africa has crushed my bones and flattened me. Heaviness in the heart of a man maketh stoop. It has made my heart stoop, precisely because I gave my life to Jesus and they decided to treat me like trash. And all of this nonsense that's going on down here in these streets is being ever more so confirmed or validated, alright, by this understanding that I happened upon of what's going on, what's going down in South African schools. But before I give you that understanding and what's presently happening in South African schools, I was giving you my own context as to where I come from, explaining to you that I was born in 1984, so I grew up at the latter part of apartheid, experienced freedom when it finally did come, when I was still relatively young, and saw the transition, I guess, from the old government, the old regime, to the new democracy, and how it is that it affected the climate or the heart of the pupil, the student body of the country. I spoke about how it is, I last ended with saying that the constitution of this country, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, is an Act 198, right, of 1996. And it puts forward all of these rights, these human rights for children and what have you. Corporate punishment was also eradicated when I was still in school, yet it was still done, right? Type establishment thing. And I spoke about how it is that despite kids having rights under the constitution of the country, I was in high school first year in 1998, so the constitution had been in operation already, in effect, for 2 years at that stage. And yet when I was in grade 9, so that is 1999, all right, I had this teacher for accounting by the name of Mrs. Peters. God bless her soul, proper. Loved her because I was a boffin. You would have hated her if you were not a boffin, because of the fact that Mrs. Peters used to call kids that were underperforming in her subject, that frustrated the living daylights out of her, rubbishes. Like proper, she used to call them rubbishes, right? And she would make them sit at the back of the class. And yet, despite all that, my sister had her, my older sister had her, gone through that, the generation before us and then us. Yeah, And there was never in the whole entire tenure of Mrs. Peters' career, I believe I left her as Sir John Adams since she was still teaching grade 9 accounting. Okay, yeah. Never once was there ever a parent that came to school to lament about what would be the tantamount or the equivalent of reviling by a teacher who's out calling children rubbishes and how this is messing with their human rights to I don't know what at this particular point. All the sensitivity in children today that's making them lord it over, rule with an iron fist. Adults, figures of authority in society. It's like the world is upside down. It is absurd. Do you understand what I'm saying? No longer do children have the fear of their parents in them. No longer do they have the fear of God in them. It's just, there's no, roll that reverse. It's like they're running us and not the other way around. And a society like that cannot thrive. Do you understand? We teach children in the way that they should go, and when they're older, they don't depart from it. The admonition of the Lord, they have to be trained to respect parents. And the rod, what is this, spanking and all that jazz, is beneficial according to the scriptures. Do not spare the child the rod, because in the heart of a child dwells a great deal of folly, but the rod of discipline drives it far away from him. So when kids don't get disciplined and the government of your country is enabling this complacency in the hands of authority figures to discipline children, the nations are therefore then on that day participating in the mutiny against their own future. If a government is creating rules and laws to take away from the fundamental building blocks that make for solid, strong, responsible adults in children today, you have destroyed the future. You have completely decimated the future. So what the ANC did in thinking that they're fixing things was just destroy them. And for me, it's like, the ANC is made up of all of these black people that were raised under grandmother's rod. And yet they refused. They literally spared children the rod, even though they became who they are because of the rod. This is Africa. We remain still largely among the still most raw places on the planet when it comes to child discipline. And if African nations are out here putting that level of rubbish in their constitutions, giving children wide rights, far-reaching rights that make out of them lords over adults and not the other way around, out here pampering a child's ego before folly has been uprooted out of them, you are setting up society for failure. You are creating a whole bunch of pompous narcissists that have no regard for human beings, for the sanctity of human life. And that in and of themselves are going to find themselves frustrated by their own children, frustrated by their own kids, children who are telling parents what they want and not the other way around. Where it is that now you're listening to a child instead of what is best for that kid. That's why what's going on in America right now is so bizarre. Why children are now able to have abortions without parents knowing from the age of 12. Like there's like a whole government law in this country, in South Africa, that I heard spoken about maybe like a year and a half ago. This one colored lady rocking up, lamenting about how it is that there's going to be a town hall to present this particular proposed legislation, and South Africans must rise up and lament against it, complain, essentially push back, because it's trying to award your 12-year-olds an abortion without mom or dad knowing. It is trying to get your children vaccinated without mom or dad knowing. It is trying to grab children that are, that refuse to do, 5-year-olds being trained in curricula that masturbation is okay. Yeah, this is happening in South Africa. Like, she was reading this sheet of paper, and as she was reading this proposed legislation, this proposed bill, I don't know what has since happened, I was gobsmacked, shocked out of my mind, wondering, is this America? What's going on? Am I seeing double? Is this deja vu? Like, I don't understand. Because this is the kind of bizarre stuff that's happening in the West. This cannot be coming to the doors, to the shelves of South African stores, of African stores. Have we lost our minds? And to think that our government is majority black, it's like, where did you grow up? In apartheid South Africa, where there was no rod of discipline that you're now trying to spare your child from. Hebatong, ANC, do you not belong to the Illuminati or something? Aren't you just a bunch of Freemasons trying to destroy South Africa? Why are you setting children up for failure? But Wabantu, who have been known to be so strict with children, more strict even than white parents, have black parents historically been known to be. And here it is that our black government is out here legislating the destruction of our children, making them namby-pamby, untrained and entitled, yet and also extremely protected, despite their rebellion, despite their delinquent general disposition. despite the fact that folly has not been driven far away from them. And if at all your kids are going to end up growing up in a climate of that nature, what are the odds that your children are going to be okay in the end? Like, we're going to have a discussion, okay? We're going to have a discussion. If they don't get taken by a tsunami, they're going to be terrorized by those who are causing a tsunami. Is that basic? In the previous part, I spoke about how it is that if at all I'm looking forward to a future, what in the world does it look like for my children? I already would have worked like a dog to make sure that I marry a godly man, that he might be nicely influential over the children. But what's the point? What's the purpose of my influence and my husband's influence if these children are going to get taken over by this particular society? Then what is the point? Then I guess we might as well go home, right? This the Mrs. Peters, that accounting teacher that Ajo called kids rubbishes, would not survive 10 days on the job in 2024, even though she was an excellent teacher. We did not get to just randomly go out of ourselves and wreak havoc in the lives of teachers. And when you out your quoting your rights, you got laughed at. You probably got laughed at. The Constitution was already applicable to us when I was in high school, and even the latter part of primary. It was already applicable. And yet nobody waved that as a whip, a chief whip, a cracking whip at anybody. Kids did not threaten teachers with their rights. It just never happened when I was in school. And like I told you, never in my life have I ever seen the level of violence that I saw in schools, in kids, that in my days, never. Where it is that like people are literally going home with no ear, with a knife. Like, imagine your child going to school and like not coming back. You probably have to go and identify the body of your kid. No, not because they got hit by a car while trying to cross the road, but because another child at school killed your kid. Like, stuff like that started happening not after I matriculated. It would be some years before then. I was already in my 20s working in corporate South Africa when we heard about the sword killer. And I was like, what in the world? And then my younger sister, who is like a Gen Z, I'm a millennial, okay? Yeah, no. Her stories, wild. Absolutely wild. The stuff that she saw in her school, in her district. I was like, whoa. I saw this thing already before I got born again. When I got saved, it all just made sense. It all made sense. It's the last day, 2 Timothy 3. Disobedient to parents and of course authority at all. Everything godly is being ripped out of society. We are in the last days, they're perilous. And if the future generation is not being reared up in the admonition of the Lord, just as we were, even though we were pagan, we were ungodly, we were not born again children, but we were being regulated by a Christian nation. We were being regulated by a Christian principled country. So whether or not you were a saint, a Christian, truly born again, was irrelevant, because still the general climate of the country was regulating. It created a homeostatic environment of general peacefulness in schools and general respect. I'm gonna get to the fact that this thing, I can't believe, it's happening in South Africa, but it's also happening globally. I don't know how many teachers I have subscribed to on YouTube that are speaking about this in different countries, especially in the US. How it is that, guys, children are calling the shots. The epidemic of what do you call this? Resignations. The epidemic of teacher resignations in the US is astronomical, and they are resigning because of Gen Alpha and Z. They are resigning because of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha are the babies, they're the toddlers, they're 13 and down. They used to be the most delightful, and now teachers are resigning because of them. I spoke in my previous pod that I had never seen a teacher crying because of kids before. In my entire tenure, there was once a teacher that quit at my school when I was at Sir John in grade 8, Miss Pastana, I remember. We used to love her. She quit because we were apparently ill-disciplined and she was moving to a private school. When she announced that she's going to be leaving, we all planned a meeting in the class as kids to apologize to her and beg her to stay. She of course said no and left anyway. But that kind of behavior just does not exist, where kids are even able to feel contriteness, sorrow for what they've done, discomfort with the ramifications of their actions. Enough to say, please stay, we're sorry, we don't want you to leave. We don't want you to leave. Are they apologizing to teachers? No. Now they're just getting fired, these teachers, because of the fact that they have infringed on some constitutional right of some brat whose side was taken because nobody protects the teachers. Nobody protects the teachers. It's just the kids. If kids are the only ones with rights, and if at all, when a teacher walks into the fields, the gates of a school, they are not vested upon them authority to not only teach children but also instill discipline, then what's the point? It's actually what I was thinking about when I was showering. I was thinking, if you don't have authority, if you're not vested, with authority to not only teach but also instill discipline, what's the point? Because if you're standing there on some 1 + 1 = 2 and people are unruly and you can't discipline them, if you also can't enforce rules on them, if you cannot consequence manage, if you can't punish them for bad behavior, what's the point? What's the point? All you have is the fact that you're here to earn a salary to teach, whether or not you can actually do it. If there's somebody distracting the living daylights out of you in the class, you can't even kick them out, apparently. When I was in school, I don't know how many times in high school, never mind primary, I have not only personally been kicked out of class, but my fellow pupils were kicked out, and sometimes for an entire period would we remain kicked out of class. Do you understand what I'm saying? Missing out on an entire lesson, and then we would go home and come back the next day and it would be business as usual. Ain't nobody out here bringing mom to school or dad to school. Ain't nobody out here literally going out of their way to baisa a teacher for kicking them out of class. When I was in grade 8, we had the science teacher, Mr. Kraus. Corporal punishment was already outlawed in the country, and the man made it clear he don't care. He used to hit us with a ruler, and none of us reported it because it's out of the law. He made it clear that he doesn't care that it's outlawed. He still used it, and none of us reported him. Top of that, if he found us eating bubble gum, he would put it in one strand of our hair, dangling there, so that we would lose that strand of hair. Nobody out here went and reported him for any kind of random strange abuse or violence. The man probably retired, well loved as a science teacher. That's what's good. Now, if you kick a child out of class for being unruly, for wreaking havoc, you can't just say, John, Pumpele, Tsepo, get out of my class. And then Tsepo's out just sitting outside with everybody walking by. It's like proper. Yeah, I've been kicked out of class so much in my entire tenure in primary and in high school that essentially by now I should be sitting on like a multi-million rand lawsuit, having sued my school for infringing my constitutional right to an education. So I mean, if an unruly child can't be told get out of my classroom, if an unruly child cannot be told get out and sit outside in just Njefela outside the classroom over there, if an unruly kid cannot be told that, what right of recourse do you have as a teacher to deal with them in the classroom? Well, what right of recourse do you have? Well, what can you do? Just take this buzzing fly in the classroom in your stride. That is what is expected of teachers. Like, you know, when a law-making body do not consider the potential ramifications of their stupid laws. I'm gonna go on right ahead and tell you what it is that I happened upon on YouTube. This guy that used to be a teacher for 10 years in South Africa, he has a YouTube channel where he shares his life journey and whatnot, and that is the video that I clicked on and I listened to it. And he said that he quit his job because there's an epidemic, a whole mass exodus of people from the teaching profession because of all this rubbish with the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas. Do you understand? This man was telling a story about how it is that so first of all, I clicked on, the only reason why I actually clicked on that video was because the name of the title of the video was Glen Vista High, commentary on the Glen Vista High fight between teacher and student. Commentary on the Glen Vista High fight between teacher and student. So because I went to a school in the south of Johannesburg, I know Glen Vista High. We used to play netball with them and all that jazz. So because it was so near to home, I clicked on it. Otherwise, if it was any other school, I probably wouldn't have clicked. I clicked on this video and I listened to this guy speak. And then he was like, my comment on that whole incident at Glen Vista High. First, before I give the comment or my, whole, explanation of the thing, let me tell you my own experience. There was once a kid who, in a school that I used to teach at, that elbowed a teacher in the breast. He used some other word that I just felt like, dude, you could have been a lot more decent. All right, this kid elbowed a female teacher in the breast, injuring her. Okay, Because iPads, like electronics essentially, are supposed to be used only for school stuff. You are not supposed to use it for any other purpose during school hours, during working hours. And the rules of the school is that if at all you are found using your iPad for playing games or anything other than doing school, we can confiscate it, right? So this teacher sees this kid playing with the iPad, however, not doing school, and she attempts to confiscate it from him or her. The guy did not make it clear if it was a boy or a girl, okay? Confiscated from the kid. And this kid was like, get out of my face, and elbowed. Whoa. Yes, just the thought of it makes me, like, it makes me wince. Like I could never fathom any kid in my time elbowing a teacher. Elbowing a grown-up. Yo, guys. Yes, apparently this kid elbowed the teacher, hurting her breast. Okay? This teacher did what any sober human being would do. Instead of retaliate, realizing that she's dealing with a child, cannot fight back, she leaves the classroom to go and report this issue. And at the same time as she's leaving to report this issue, this child stands up as well, leaves the classroom, goes to the bathroom, and calls his or her dad and starts rapping onto the dad, speaking smack. The dad then rocks up and picks this child up, and they go home. The teacher comes back to class with the principal to basically deal with this issue that has just ensued right now. And the kid is nowhere to be found. The kid is nowhere to be found, right? It becomes a whole frantic search all over the school looking for this kid. So eventually they call the dad, they call the parents on some, your kid is not in school, he just left. Or she just left. I can't remember if it's a boy or girl. Let's just say it was a girl or a boy. Let's say it's a boy. He just left. Okay? The dad is like, why did you leave my child unattended? I'm out here paying fees. I leave my child in your care, in your custody for the day, and you lose my kid? Why in the world has my kid eluded you? You have basically walked in a dereliction of duties. My kid's life is in danger now. My kid is nowhere to be found. You're supposed to know where this kid is at. The dad has the kid. Yo, remember what I told you guys about when I was growing up? The kid was always wrong. Ain't no teacher ever taken this, ain't no parent ever taken the side of the kid. The kid was always the one being rebuked and disciplined by both parent and teacher. But this time around, the side of the derelict child is being taken. And you know, on the part of the parents, this is what I gotta say. Nobody knows your kid better than you. Nobody. And if your kid is manipulative, you know. If your kid is ill-disciplined, you also know. If your kid speaks whatever they want to speak, you know. If your child has wreaked havoc in the community where you stay, in the complex where you live, if your child disrespects his grandmother, you know. If this kid has given you a hard time, throwing their toys out the cot, you know your own child. And so, when you've got this gentle parenting, that's what they call it in America, right? When you've got this whole gentle parenting approach, where you tell yourself that you're going to take all the random rubbish that a child can throw at you and feel as if though that is the right way to raise a child, that they might feel strong and protected. You are not only sparing them the rod, but you are giving them a scepter to rule as one who has not even been trained how to basically like a person that hasn't even been potty trained, a person that has not been given, they have not, guys, apparently a moral compass is not fully established. Essentially your sense of society and how to act and how to be in it before the age of 21, I believe. A full thorough set of convictions and a moral compass as to what are your values, what it is that you're prepared to do, what you won't do. The solidness of that is still fluffy before about the age of 21. So you can be tossed to and from your values up until the age of 21. If you have not established a solid conviction or a moral compass yet, because you're just 16, why are you out here making like Hercules or Zeus with a scepter, ruling the oceans, the sea of humanity? Why is that even a thing? Why is that even a thing? And yet parents are giving children scepters like kings now, like queens, to basically be in charge of their own destinies without giving them a foundation. It is no wonder the world is falling apart, cracking at the seams the way that it is presently. Anyway, let's just go back to the story. This dad lies to the school, says that he doesn't know where his kid is at, and then next thing, everybody's looking out for these kids. Everybody is running around all over the show. They don't know where this child is at. The dad then rocks up at the school, lawyered up, like he's out here holding an advocate all up in his armpit, an attorney all up in his armpit, And this lawyer man then starts to rap on and on and on about, like, guys, I mean, like, to go and recruit the services of an attorney who is likely paid per hour in order to deal with a lament of a child. Negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, nothing being employed, like proper. You are reinforcing behavior in this child. If at all, a lawyer can just be called up and dad pay the hourly rate of this man or woman to humor a falling out, a dispute, and a discipline issue at a school with a child. What in the world is this kid gonna do in the future, and how entitled are they going to be? If all, like, proper, if your dad has so much money that he can just, I have consulted a lawyer, guys, and he once charged me, like, this whole situation that I endured with MTN. I went to some law firm in Sandton, and this dude was out here telling me about how it is that he charges 2,500 Rand an hour. So, I mean, how much money did that man have to not only get a lawyer on the phone, but drive to the school and engage in this little debacle? A kid goes on right ahead to disrespect a teacher in class, elbows the teacher in the breast, and dad parts ways with 2,500 Rand just to threaten some teachers on behalf of a kid that he knows. When you know your child, you know your child, you know your child. And so, my goodness, what kind of a society are we drafting here? Are we building? Exactly. Here it is that this man then rocks up with that level of deception in a household. I mean, just the fact that the dad could deceive the school into thinking that the kid is missing. That for me was just like it was a killer, it was a shocker, it was a kicker. Just like the jaw droppers in the song that I wrote, yeah, Adele, Daydreamer, they are jaw droppers. Look good while they stalk, are the subject of the talk would. Yeah, you get my point. Ridiculous. This man rocks up with the lawyer, talking about how it is that you've lost my child. The whole school is up in arms. Like, basically everything has stopped now for the day, and they are just looking for a child that is sitting comfortably either in daddy's car or is at a home or whatever. The dad eventually admits that the kid has been found, but the whole premise of their argument was, you were not supposed to leave these kids unattended. And there were cameras, oh yeah, mind you, there were cameras in the classroom. That's what this guy also said, that captured all of this evidence, right? But apparently, allegedly, those cameras can only be used in the case of theft. They cannot be used to micromanage children. They are not there for the purpose, like, you know, law and the loopholes, like proper. I don't even know how anybody can be a lawyer and a Christian. I don't know. I do not know. It's just such a dishonest profession. It's so rough. It is so, like, anyway, whatever. Because of, like, the loopholes in not being able to use certain facts in a case of court, or certain evidence as being throw-outable out of court or whatever, you can just dispose of it because these cameras might have been there and they might have caught the act in question for what it is exactly. But bottom line is, the cameras are here to surveil theft, not children, not micromanage kids, to see what under heaven they're doing. So, I mean, with that kind of logic, can you imagine if a kid murdered another kid in class and it was caught on camera, and there is not sufficient evidence to pin this on the kid other than that video footage? Are you telling me that it would not be admissible in court because of the loophole that it cannot be used to surveil or micromanage children, only theft? For real. Like, I'm sorry. May the true one and only be all and end all of a lawgiver come and salvage the earth from all of this heinous activity down in these streets. The video, the footage of this assault on the teacher that was captured was disregarded. It could not be used. They also could not interview the children to find out what in the world happened without getting consent from all the parents in question. It would be like a whole process. And so therefore, because that whole thing was not embarked on, and this dude rocked up and just gave laws and laws and laws and what have you, speaking about even how it is that those cameras cannot be used as evidence against the child, the teacher got fired. The contract was severed. The woman lost her job. Here it is that you are enforcing school rules. What is the school rule? You cannot use your iPad for games during school hours, otherwise it gets confiscated. The teacher tries to confiscate it. The child gets aggressive, violent. The teacher does not respond in violence, but rather leaves the room. However, apparently, allegedly, she was not supposed to leave kids unattended. As a result, a kid went missing on her watch. Yo, guys, yes, you know, with that whole leaving, like, what under heaven? What are they supposed to do? What if the teacher needs to use the bathroom during class? What if they need to go to the staff room? I don't know how many times we've been left unattended. when I was on the come up. Like these laws, you know, when you are in building legislation, when you are writing legislation, you need to have stipulations on the side as to what are the exceptions. There've got to be exceptions. Just like with the human rights and the Constitution, there are limitations to those rights. They are like you can't just abuse a right. Like for instance, with the right to the freedom of expression, there are restrictions in light of hate speech. So you can't just blanketly apply it. That's how you interpret the law. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if a teacher needs to use the bathroom and something happens during their bathroom break, are you gonna tell me that this person is then basically found wanting and negligent of these children because they needed to use the bathroom? They were super pressed to pee. Must they call a teacher or a substitute or the principal in the office to come and man the post while she's doing her business and then come? No, of course not. And these are basic things that ought to have been employed in this particular circumstance. But just because she left her post and left these children unattended, the woman lost her job on that technicality, despite there being video surveillance footage. So, I mean, when your reputation has been that damaged, when you have been fired, remember when I told you about Miss Pestana in grade 8? The teacher who left to go and teach at a private school was upset with us because we were unruly or whatever. And how it is that we formulated a meeting as students in the class to apologize to the teacher and beg her to stay. We had a contrite spirit. We afflicted her until she quit. We didn't afflict her until she quit. She was already interviewing for a private school. However, on the one day that we irritated her, she used it as an excuse that's why she's leaving, because of us. She can't stand us anymore type thing. But we did irritate her that day. We tried to beg her to stay because we were contrite. We were guilty. Our consciences were not seared. We realized we had hurt our teacher and we concocted as a scheme, a strategy to try and win her over again. That is somebody that melts a heart. Do you understand? It's written in God's word that a gentle answer turns away wrath. We were trying to turn away the wrath of the teacher by responding to her anger with an apology. I wonder if after that woman lost her job, that kid felt some kind of way. Do they feel some kind of way? After they get men and women fired for no other reason than their own indiscretion. First of all, you hit a person, a grown-up. You went and hit a grown woman. She then lost her job over your indiscretion. Did you feel like trash afterwards? That I can't answer. I don't know. But all I know is they don't make them the same these days. They like Annabelle, the conduit for demonic spirit doll. They like Chucky and Chucky's bride. They like the Omen. Kid out there being born with 666 on the forehead. And the exacerbator of that random rubbish are the parents. They only make it worse. When you don't build a child's moral compass and value set, they become like child soldiers. You know those ones that you find all over Africa out here walking around with AK-47s, murdering on sight that which is the target they've been told to murder, because they have not had a moral compass ingrained in them. They have only ever been taught rubbish. When will they ever recover? At what point is that kid going to wake up to realize that when I was this age, I got a teacher fired from her job because I was wrong? This kid made a decision to go and call the dad in the bathroom, out here lamenting, crying, complaining. The dad picks the kid up, pretends the kid is missing. The kid is not missing. And then the teacher winds up fired. The teacher ends up getting fired. She's the one that got elbowed. Oh, and here's the kicker. There was video surveillance footage of the incident. What would you do if a child in your class slapped you? Would you just stay there on some? How could you do that? Or would you walk out as well and go and report it? She did the most mature thing that could be done. Unlike the teacher at Glen Vista High, who threw a punch back. The teacher at Glen Vista High, who reacted to his emotions. The teacher at Glen Vista High did what would be the tantamount or equivalent of that woman in the classroom who got elbowed by the kid, taking that kid and shoving them. That's what the Glen Vista High teacher did. But this one did the morally responsible thing. The child protecting responsible thing. What she basically WWJD. What would Jesus have done? What would Jesus do? Jesus would have done what that teacher did. Go and report it to authority. Jesus would not have repaid evil for evil. Jesus would not have shoved that kid. Would not have done what the teacher at Glen Vista High did. Reacting to his anger. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Jesus would have done what the teacher in the story that this man is telling did. He would have gone to the principal's office to report the matter. Jesus would not have just stuck around though allowing this ill discipline to continue. Because Jesus believes that a rod of discipline is important for a child. They must be disciplined. That's how you drive folly far away and out of the heart of a kid. So he would not have just let it go, meaning that this woman, not just merely letting it go and sitting at her desk crying after getting elbowed by a kid. That's not what she was supposed to do. She was supposed to do exactly what she did. So when society no longer has regard for the godly reaction to a situation, there's nothing left for us to do here anymore, don't you see? If at all, Christian responses to circumstances don't stay wrath. It's written in God's word, if it is possible, you must try to live at peace with everybody. If you can't live at peace, if their reaction is always just unjust gain, it is always aggression, violence, it is always injustice. If the response to a gentle answer does not turn away wrath, where it's worthless, there's nothing worth it, there's nothing left. You understand what I'm saying? Like, what's the point of doing anything anymore? When I was taking a shower, I was thinking, if once you start working a job as a teacher, you don't get vested in like proper authority over you. You don't get anointed with authority, almost like being knighted with authority to not only teach but also discipline. What is the point? Because teaching on its own is not going to cut it. We got through school because we were both taught and disciplined. When we went out of line, we were disciplined. So if teachers cannot discipline kids because that's against the constitution, the law of the country, what the heck is happening in schools? Like, I don't know. You are basically relying or leaning on children to be self-regulated. You are hoping, going to school every single day, crossing your finger, that kids are going to be auto-regulated, that they are going to be disciplined in and of themselves without being disciplined. You are expecting that they are going to make like that flower and self-raise. That's what the government is saying. Like, really, these kids are there how many hours a day? Their parents do whatever they do at home, but the rest of the responsibility of the job is on the teachers to raise these children up in what is societally acceptable. And if in school no discipline can be employed, if there is no consequence management in school for children, what's the point? It's a circus, it's anarchy, it's chaotic, they're gonna purge. Like in that movie, they're just gonna do what they want. And so far as they can just go to the Department of Education, they will get heard. And nobody will have regard for the grown-ups. And then the Minister of Education then wonders, why are there so many stabbings in schools? Why is there such a massive diaspora of teachers from the profession? Why are kids being killed at school? Why under heaven are fights so violent that people lose teeth, that people lose ears, that people lose fingers in school? Why is a kid ending up in a wheelchair after a fight in school? What kind, like, you know, when you fight with a chair, like when you go and you throw a chair at somebody, when before it was just karabana with your fingernails. That level of wrath is demonic. To a point, like that, so much anger in a kid that they would end up murdering. It's demonic. And when there's that level of almost like Hadron Collider CERN type demonic portal opening activity in the heart of a child or children on a school playground, guys, I really do apologize. There's nothing left for us to do here anymore, because these people are agile more than grown-ups. They're stronger than grown-ups. They're faster than us. And they're stronger sometimes, bigger, girthier. Their muscles develop faster. They lose weight faster when they go on diet. They're far too strong to be ill-disciplined, is what I'm getting at. And so we're dealing with a zombie apocalypse. We are dealing with like a whole cannibal apocalypse. I told you guys that in the tribulation, kids are going to start gangs that are going to be cannibalistic. I did a video of that nature, 2 of them, describing this particular problem. So do you not see how it is that it is due to laws by our own governments, essentially purge laws by our governments, enabling all different kinds of crimes to be committed? Do you understand? By citizens on the ground, justified by their human rights, tolerating them in all of their myriads of colors of insanity. Because at the end of the day, we need to be a lot more tolerant in modern society. And human beings on the ground looking at these laws are also obsequious and fawning over the suggestion of them, because they are unprepared and therefore ill-disciplined, and so being unprepared to look into the ramifications of the potential ramifications of such laws, the potential implications of such laws when employed, effected in broad daylight. That woman got fired, despite likely, this is what's good, right? Despite likely her principal and other teachers around feeling sorry for her. Imagine firing a woman, her packing her bags and everything, her laptop, her desk, clearing it, in front of kids, some of whom might have felt bad for her, having seen this thing happening. Others, however, laughing on some And that kid that got the teacher fired, feeling like, yeah, you deserve it. Imagine her doing a walk of shame, going to her car, leaving, unemployed, with that rap sheet, looking really bad, and so therefore making her chances of getting a new job abysmal. While everybody knew that she's innocent, including teachers and the principal, everybody. Do you understand what I'm saying? That was a teacher and grown up in that circumstance, and some of the children likely understood what was the right thing that needed to happen. And yet, injustice prevailed, and a pompous man felt proud of getting a woman fired from her job, even though he knew his son. He knew Hlongwane was wrong. So you're just gonna go throughout society and just feel like costing people their careers, costing people their entire futures, bread on their table in a country that's already struggling with an epidemic of unemployment. Because your kid decided that they're gonna lie about a teacher when you know your own child. That man has just contributed to the plunging statistics of the country. Violence in schools, unemployment. Guys, there are so many myriads of socio-economic problems and social-political problems that can spur from a situation of that nature. And if you add a multiplier to it, it then mushrooms, right? And spreads like a gangrene all throughout the country. It becomes a national statistic. It just becomes an unquenchable issue. Coupled with the fact that we've got these like ridiculous, heinous pass rates. The ANC government, I don't know what in the world they think they're doing, right? They are like a three-legged horse. Can't frigging run. Frankly, you need to be put down. However, they're still running the show all these years down the line after decimating our country with their strange laws and their 20% pass mark. What is it now? When I was leaving, they had reduced it to 35%, so I wouldn't be surprised if now it's sitting at 20%. Like proper. This is this country. This is South Africa. The situation in Vista High. I did not even research it, study it, find out more, click on a news article, because I don't want to hear much about this nation. I'm angry at South Africa, but I would imagine it has something to do with the fact that the student is the one that provoked the teacher to a point of fighting. A man does not just throw away his entire career, Joe, over some stupid kid because he's got temper issues and just has not been able to bridle them. When you don't have a history of violence, you had to have been basically taken to the end of yourself. I don't know what's happening to that teacher, but all I know is that likely he's probably facing criminal charges. So unless some miracle from God happens, his future is not looking bright. But there are people sitting in the annals of schools empathizing with him because, to get into an altercation that would even make news media with a student, something had to have happened. I have been personally severely mistreated by teenagers because of my poverty, because of what I'm going through. I've been severely mistreated by teenagers that just yesterday were very good peoples with me. And just because of what it is that I'm going through, called me all different kinds of menacing names. They called me a hobo, a beggar, essentially just worthless. Family members, kids, nieces and nephews. My own little sister has treated me like the scum of the earth because of what I'm going through. And the root cause has always been their parents. The root cause has always been their parents. No discipline. When you just allow a kid to walk on top of the head of a grown-up, you know your kid, you know your child. These kids are like ones who are given free rein to terrorize because their parents are not about to rebuke it. It's written in God's word that if you cause children to sin, it'll be better if a millstone were to be tied around your neck and for you to be thrown in the ocean than for you to face God on the judgment. I have done videos about this at length explaining how it is that Gen X and millennials, you have destroyed Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And with Gen Alpha looking the way that it's looking and Gen Z looking the way that it's looking, causing a diaspora out of the teaching profession, causing murders in schools, assaults, causing all different kinds of weird anomalous activity in children. There is no future then, is there? There's no future. Because they're there. They're it. Their kids are going to be worse. They're going to be frustrated. At some point they might snap out of this nonsense. Realize they were messed up, but by then the damage has already gone too deep. By then the damage has already gone too far. That kid might grow up to turn 38 and realize that what he did when he was it high school or primary that he was teaching, where he elbowed the teacher. Yeah, might realize that what I did was messed up, but by then he is dealing with a society of children of his own that are unruly. What that man is doing, I don't understand. How in the world a society survives sons like his? No one survives a society that has children like his. No one survives a society of disrespectful kids that don't know how to talk to grown people. Nobody survives that. These kids are strong. You cannot fight them. You cannot, proper. They are bigger. They have got more energy. They're agile. I spoke about that earlier. So you will not win when you go to war with them. All that you lean on with children is instilling that discipline while they're still young, instilling fear in them while they're still young, so that when they get all beefy and chunky as teenagers, they already have got a self-regulating thing going on in them. They already have a self-respect and a respect for society at large, so that they won't use their physical agility and their strength to afflict grown-ups around them that indeed can be beaten to a pulp by them. They can be beaten to a pulp by them. But just because you can WWE wrestle down your teacher as a jock rugby player of a 17-year-old doesn't mean you should. So when you start to use your physical strength, I mean, I've been shoved, not personally, by my little sister, because she's taller than me, thicker, girthier. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And what is the thing that inspired that insanity? A lack of discipline by my mom. A lack of instilling in her respect for, never mind her older sister, but just people that are older than her at all, authority. My younger sister has ever since then grown a couple of years, and I don't know whether she's contrite. I don't know whether she has regret for what she did. Just as I don't know if that kid regrets today for having caused the firing of her teacher, of his teacher. But what is imperative to understand is that that folly that dwells in the heart of a child is ubiquitous now. There are people complaining across the globe. This gentle parenting is not working. Gentle parenting is not working. It is causing an epidemic of disrespect in children for never mind just their parents or teachers in school, but society at all of grown-ups, thinking that they can raise each other and live in a child earth that has no adults in it. And that, my dears, is the kind of stuff that 2 Timothy 3 is made up of. Disobedient to parents, always learning, never coming to a knowledge of truth, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. I don't know if South African schools are still singing hymns at assembly. All I know is that in America, they have taken out God out of the schools. They've taken Bibles out of schools. But in South Africa, I can't vouch for that. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't have children. I don't know what's going on in the schooling system. I'm not interrogating it. I'm not interested because I don't care about what's going on in this country. Secondly, I don't want to hurt myself by looking at what I could be doing as a mom when I am out here being made to menopause without children. But if hymns are still being sung in assembly, then it says that just like with what was right to be done with the teacher in class, walking out, doing what Jesus would have done, despite doing what Jesus would have done, the reaction is still not godly. The reaction is still not a piety of a society. It's not a regulation of a society. If at all the behavior of the teacher did not cause a positive reaction or a positive response, a calmed down response to the situation at hand that was unfolding. People are drunk. Yeah, if it did not cause that, then there's no hope. So similarly too, if there are still hymns being sung in schools, if our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, is still sung in assembly, but this is still happening. It says that the gospel is going in one ear out the other, that society is not being regulated by God's law, that we are at the great apostasy where people will always learn, never come to a knowledge of truth. They will have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof, and the world will therefore be insufferable, perilous. We are sitting in perilous times. These wars, fights in schools will keep happening, and in increasing measure. So the question that then I have is, if I were to raise my children up in the admonition of the Lord, my husband is all godly, the two of us are vying, striving, and my kids go into the schooling system or university with the world looking the way that it is right now, one of two things is inevitable. The first scenario is that my kids will apostatize because of the influence of the world. So already children are going to hell despite parents teaching them better. The other scenario is that if my kids maintain their godliness despite society's pressure, they're going to be persecuted. So literally it does not end well either way. They're going to be persecuted for not going with the grain. So if they don't join the band of miscreants, they get afflicted by the band of miscreants, making the quality of their lives lackluster anyway, making our endeavors, our efforts as parents worthless to try and establish a future for your kids. They could get killed on campus for simply being pro-Israel and Christian. Because in the society of little sword killers in schools, my goodness, no. There is no one that is safe that is trying to do what Jesus would have done. The teacher in that school did what Jesus would have done and yet still lost her job. I did what Jesus would have done and I lost my whole career. My kids in the future will do what Jesus would have done and they will have found themselves beaten on campus at university. If there is no way for us to put our feet down, even when we are trying to be meek and lowly and gentle like Jesus, in the way that we react to society around us. Even if we try, if we are still nonetheless being uppercut, right hooked, if we are still being shoved, if we are still being elbowed in the breast, what's the point? What's the point? There is nowhere for us to live anymore as Christians. I want children. And even if I were to meet the godliest man in the world, we still have to deal with the fact that we are decades away from the day we will have to attend our child's funeral because they were killed in a protest at a university for being Christian and pro-Israel, or we are decades away from facing just comfort and support of a child that's going to come back from school bruised and beaten for standing for Christ. We are a decade or two away from having our kid come back suspended from school for standing on their Christian values. Like proper in primary school, high school, a godly kid is still going to be teased and mocked. So if it is no longer feasible for Christians to live in society, either they must apostatize or be persecuted even unto martyrdom, then I guess we gotta go home. If the trajectory, if the projectile looking into the future, if the perspective is that bleak for Christianity because of what it presently looks like right now, it makes sense why the Lord would stay a woman from having a husband, even if it's the godliest man in South Africa or the godliest man in the world at all. Bottom line is, the future that we are going to try and build for our children is dead. It appears dead. And the only way that this future might still live is if the present generation repents, is if the dad of that deadbeat kid, or rather, if the deadbeat dad of that kid who is making that kid deadbeat reacts by, wenzeni Tshepo, why nawe ukhale bathroomini? I'm coming to the school to get both sides of the story. If that dad had done just that, that kid might have been saved. That kid's soul might have been saved. But instead, that kid has got now the blood of a teacher on his hands because the dad went and exacerbated an issue and literally reinforced wicked behavior of a child. And that's happening on a multiplier across the show. So the only way that there is a future for my children in the country is if the dad of that kid reacts by listening to both sides of the story and then going home and disciplining his child for elbowing a teacher. What are you doing? Why are you elbowing? Why was that dad not perturbed by the fact that mistress? Why was that dad not afflicted by the fact that his kid physically assaulted a teacher? Why was that not on his list of things to address? Instead, he got a woman fired. He brought a lawyer to school. The only day that my kids are safe growing up in this society is if that dad, that proverbial dad, that metaphoric dad, that dad added on a multiplier to South Africa, decides to listen to the ground and hear for WWJD. What would Jesus do? If that man decides to heed the fact that he's living in a Christian country and we don't just do barbarianism, we don't just do lunacy, we don't just let kids swing on a chandelier like Sia and do what thy wilt, for that is the whole of the law. Unless that dad repents like Nineveh, there's no future, never mind for South Africa, but for the earth at large. Because like I said, this issue is not just in South Africa. It's global. The whole teacher diaspora issue, the exodus from the profession, the problems with the Gen Zs and the Gen Xs, and not Xs, but the Gen Alpha. It is a global epidemic. It's a global issue. I am presently subscribed to teachers who have quit the profession, who have dedicated their entire YouTube channels to talking about this issue on YouTube. It's not South African only. So we are going home, guys. We are very potentially going home. Seeing as the Lord is showing me both sides of the coin could ensue. If they repented, then the Lord would stay his hand from finishing this thing off. But if they don't, if that dad continues to call some lawyers instead of hear what Jesus would do, instead of go to the school, instead of realize that, you know your own child. You know your own child. Because the dad refuses to do introspection, the rapture must happen. Because there is no future in a world full of kids like that. Because they are the future. And if they look like that, there's no future. That's what I'm getting at. But at the same time, there's those middle schools kids in the US protesting against the furries. However, if the adult conglomerate are resisting children who want to do what is normal, what is the future? Which is why I asked myself, in that scenario that was told by that dude on YouTube, were there any kids in the classroom that were like, ma'am, this kid got ma'am fired? Did other kids not be like, my goodness, what, like next time I talk to you strange sideways in some other funny way, you gonna call your dad on me? and get me expelled from the school? Is that what you're going to do? You're going to pull in a favor with your dad? I wonder if there are other kids in the school that were like, ukubisitse mistress, ukubisitse ma'am, like you proper cost ma'ams, you cost her job. You were wrong, dog. And you cost the teacher her job. We saw you. You elbowed the teacher. You spoke smack to her. You profaned her. And now she doesn't have a job. Yo, mina yaksaba boy. I wonder if the kids in the class applauded that kid or if they looked down on him. Because if they looked down on him, maybe there's hope for society. Perhaps, just maybe, there's some kind of hope for society. But right now, I don't know. I have no idea. But look at what is going on. A person speaking such things as these is unable to speak truly. On YouTube, I'm frozen. People are casting spells on me. Men insist on putting me in their houses when I've got this kind of story to tell, when I've got these kinds of things to speak, when I've got this kind of admonition to send out, when I've got this kind of warning to send to the streets. Some selfish, narcissistic boys want me to be some Stepford wife sitting around out here being given money when I can't make my own because somebody's manipulating me with spurts. I'm speaking these things. I'm making observations of this stuff. I have defected from my own country. I'm only here in body but not in spirit because of the level of wickedness in this land. And somebody is trying to put me in his house as a Stepford wife. Just irresponsible, careless treatment of people in a spirit of selfishness, self-regulation, self-guarding, like your own self-interest, lover of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. You cannot think about anyone but yourself, and so you are literally calamitizing a planet. Go fail, I fail. It's imploding, all of it, because of you, because you want a Stepford wife. That's what's going on in these South African streets. No one is listening to my channel on YouTube, and despite no one listening, I still rock up and I'm like, but God, do I have a future? Or is this over? This can only end one of two ways for me. Either I get a future because you repent, or I go to heaven because you don't. Either way, it's not going to work out for you. It's going to work out for me. Only one scenario works out for you. Only one scenario works out for the enemies of the cross. Only one scenario works out for the absurd, for the dastardly. Only one scenario works out for the unreasonable. To repent. However, absent of repenting, you're facing the tribulation. Is that basic? You're facing the tribulation. The tribulation is inevitable if you don't repent. But guess who is safe either way? Me. I either get my future with my husband because you repented, with my children that are going to be able to grow up and not be afflicted on university campus and killed for loving Jesus and the Jews. Or I go to heaven, saddened, of course, in the run-up too, of the fact that I never got to use my womb and everything. Never got to be fertilized, never got to know what it's like to carry a baby to term. Yeah, that's gonna hurt. But hey, Christ will wipe away every tear from my eye, will he not? He will restore to me that which the locust, the palmerworm, the cankerworm, etc. has stolen. So really, South Africa, you've got one of two options, and not just South Africa, but planet at large. But it doesn't matter because when I'm speaking, nobody listens. You can either repent, and so have a future where nobody is out just slashing the tires of a Christian just because they love Jesus. Or you can perish. Luke 13. Repent or perish. But you can't continue in this way. There is no way you can continue. You've already heard, you've seen the stories in the media. If you don't think stories, and I say absurd, if you don't think that this stuff that's happening in South African schools and global schools is absurd, then you're living in a cocoon. You're naive. You're living in some kind of a silo. You are unique in space somewhere all by yourself, in some capsule that has just enough oxygen for you. But you are certainly not living on a gravitationally pulled earth, downed to it, able to fall with a thud, and so therefore, with an incentive to prevent that fall. You are naive to think you can roam around in a bubble of grabbing for yourself some Stepford wives just because you have desires, just because your loins are titivated and you can't help but desire someone that is absolutely off the table for you. I am exhausted. It's like ridiculous how tired I am, but it doesn't matter because I won't be for much longer. This here cannot continue. What I'm trying to explain to you guys is that this downward spiral, this trajectory, an object in motion, staying in motion unless acted on by another force. If that force is not your own repentance, it will be Jesus. Do not say I did not warn you. I'm signing out in Christ's name, Cran K. Peace.